Hey there, it's Jamie Ware, the marketing director with Blanchard and Calhoun, here with Tiffany Heitzman, who is the executive director of the Homebuilders Association of the Greater Aiken-Augusta area
Region.
region.
It's a
Okay.
mouthful.
Yeah, it is a mouthful. Tiffany, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Jamie, so
Good.
much for having me.
Yes. So I was super excited to have you because I think people just don't know what you guys do, right? But you guys have done this home builders community or this building community campaign. So people have been seeing more of you. So I'm getting questions like, who are these people and what are they doing?
Yeah.
So let's start off there. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about what you guys do.
So the Homebuilders Association has been around this year is our 70th anniversary. And we advocate on behalf of housing. So our goal, our vision, everything that drives us is that every person is able to own a home one day. And that looks different for everyone, but so we advocate locally on the state level and federal level. So even in DC, working on policies and things that can help bring more houses to everyone.
Okay. And you guys are a nonprofit, correct?
We are. We're like a chamber of commerce,
Mhm.
but for the home building industry. So, and it's not just builders and developers, it's our real estate companies, our mortgage banks, our subcontractors, anybody that touches the home building process from before the dirt turns to when the keys are handed to the new homeowner.
Okay, so as far as community members, like people who, like you said, are looking to own a home, what kind of resources can they get from you?
Yeah, so we have a website with all of our members. And so, in order to be a member, you have to be, if you're a builder, you have to have your license. But all of our members are insured and bonded. So, it's a great place to go because we heard a lot of horror stories after the hurricane about, all these out of town people coming and, pickup trucks, and that did a job, left and didn't finish or whatever. So I just encourage everyone to always, I hope you use a member of the home building industry or the association, but always make sure that they are licensed, they have insurance, they're bonded, so that you're protected.
So it sounds like you properly like vet all of these people.
Yes.
Okay. And then what happens if they don't do what they're supposed to do, or if you get complaints? Do you guys handle stuff like that as well?
Yeah, we try not to get too involved in the, because that can be very emotional.
Sure.
When it's somebody's, but we have resources at the Secretary of State's office who holds the licenses for real estate agents, for contractors, and the real estate license board as well. And so we can, contact them and say, hey, but also a lot of we have an insurance program, builder's risk insurance program. And so they have to be licensed in order to participate, and they have to be a member of our association. And so every year they audit their participants, and then they'll send that list to us, and we have to verify that they're members of our association. They send it to the Secretary of State's office to make sure their license is up to date as
Oh.
well.
Great. Well, that's good because if you're, like you said, you want to work with somebody who's been vetted, who's local,
Yes.
and has some accountability for what they're doing.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
on the other side, we've talked a little bit about what you do for community members. How do you help the builders? How do you help the people who are members of the association?
Yeah, so we work closely with our government entities, our municipalities, our counties, state level, federal level. I travel to DC several times a year. I travel to both capitals because we have two counties in Aiken. Spend a lot of time, Atlanta, Columbia. We have a great working relationship with our local delegations. So if there's bills that have dropped that are good for our industry or bad for our industry, they hear from us. Several of our members of our association have testified in Atlanta in committee hearings, Senate, House committees. Actually, one of our local builders is the chair of the State Government Affairs Committee, Mark Ivy, and he'll be the state home builders president beginning in the fall of this year. So we'll really have some great local representation on a state board. But yeah, we work as hard and as we can on behalf of our builders, so that they can put houses on the ground and sell houses. Y'all's company, so y'all have houses to sell your agents. But yeah, we meet with our local government entities on a regular basis. Most of those we have monthly meetings that I take a group, myself included, and go and meet if there's issues going on with permits or if there's some regulations that they're looking at to add. We work tirelessly on those efforts.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, what is kind of the biggest challenge you feel like exists for the home building community right now?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is the misconception that all of the real estate developers and builders are just sitting around counting their money, putting money in the bank.
Sure.
But actually, 28 to 32% of the cost of a new home is because of government regulations. That's local, state, federal.
Wow.
That there's nothing that builders or developers can do to reduce that cost. So it's, they're always looking at ways to help get price points down so that more families can afford it. I saw a statistic just a couple weeks ago that the average age of the first-time home buyer is now almost 40 years old, and that just blows my mind, because I remember when it used to be 24.
Right.
You went to school or you went to tech or you got out of high school and got a job, and then the next step was buy a house. And there's so many people out there now that can't do that because they can't afford it. And when we talk about affordable housing or obtainable housing, everybody automatically thinks that's like government subsidized housing, and
Sure.
that's not what it is. It's really those first-time home buyers. My kids, I have a 20-year-old. I'm thinking about her. That's what keeps me awake at night, is how she's going to afford a house. But even, our first responders who have limited income, our teachers, people in the medical field, our EMT, our firefighters, all of those that are just getting started in their career, how are they going to be able to afford a home? So that's really what we work on every day. So it's really the cost, and there's things that we can do, and there are a lot of things that we can't do
Sure.
to reduce that cost. But that's the challenge, finding tracts of land. I know y'all deal with that on a daily basis. Large tracts of land where houses can go is getting, smaller and smaller, those windows. And then just the community or the personal opinions of people about housing. We hear it all the time. Y'all hear it all the time. Like, oh, y'all take down all the trees. Oh, you did this. Oh, you created more traffic. But they want all the things that come with that. They want the 12. I think I passed 12 coffee shops on my way from my office to here.
Mm-hmm.
They want the groceries. They want the restaurants. They want the retail. But none of that happens without rooftops. The home building industry is one of the largest industries that pays into the tax bucket of money.
Sure.
With sales tax, with the permit fees and all the things that we buy. All of our subcontractors, we have to pay sales tax on all of that. So we help fund schools, we help fund roads, we help fund other projects, all the SPLOST projects. So we're a huge contributor into the tax docket.
Well, and I'm sure for the builders, they want to put these products out there. They want to make it affordable, but they also want to make sure that quality of their building is to their standards, right? And like you said, you can only cut costs so much before you start going into quality. What is some of the feedback you've heard about that?
Yeah, I think now it's trying to get creative on like what housing looks like. And I tell this story a lot. You've probably heard me say it, but looking at different ways to provide different types of housing in one community, like a planned development.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Orlando to the Homebuilders show 4 years ago, and they took us on a tour to this neighborhood when Disney relocated to outside of Orlando. And this neighborhood was really built to encompass all the people that were going to be coming to work for Disney headquarters. And it was this beautiful neighborhood, and it had $1 million house, and then next door to it, it would have like a $400,000 house, and then another $400,000 house, and then maybe a $500,000 house. and it had these courtyards that the houses butted up to. And I looked, and there was like 20 kids playing in that courtyard. They didn't care what type of house you were living in
Right.
or how much it costs. And I was like, I remember seeing, I was like, this is community. Like, what better way? And I think, in some areas we're like, oh, we want the white picket fence and the half acre lots. And that's really not the case anymore. I mean, there's national statistics anymore. Even our age, the older generation, they want smaller, less to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we need to be more open to that. Our counties and our municipalities need to be more open to, exploring other options except traditional, half acre lots or this or that. Another thing I talk about a lot is because I live in a neighborhood that they required sidewalks on both sides of the road. Very seldom do I see people using both sides. Like, what's wrong with one sidewalk on one side of the road?
Right.
Because that saves a substantial amount of money. I mean, concrete, paving, all of that costs a lot of money. Or, we have some municipalities that might require us to put 6 or 8 trees in one lot. Well, those trees are $2,000 a piece. So right there, that's, if you had to do 6 of them, that's, $12,000.
A whole lot of money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Why not put 3?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back a year later, and a lot of people take those trees down because they don't want to have to pick up the leaves, or they want more room in their yard if they have young kids that are playing football or whatever. So just thinking about those things, like everybody has this picture of what it should be, but is that what everybody wants? Not necessarily anymore.
Right. Well, and then you think about Helene, right? When you talk about so many people after Helene went and took all of their trees out.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't want that issue to come back up again.
Yeah.
And I know you guys had a lot to do with kind of the aftermath of Helene and how you guys helped. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement in what you guys did?
Yeah. It was pretty incredible. I might, I get overwhelmed sometimes about what we did. But to say that, that's a great example about the hurricane. So the neighborhoods that had a lot of trees in them, they got destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Our new development communities hardly got any damage. Like, there might have been a few shingles or, some fencing that, came down, but very little damage, because there wasn't this humongous tree canopy in the way of houses.
Right.
But yeah, so I remember it was like day 4. We didn't have power. We barely had cell phones, depending. I mean, I remember I would drive to South Carolina to get, and I was just sitting there. I was like, I got to do something. Like, we build. Like, that's what we do. Like, that's who I represent. Like, we need to go do something. And so I just, got a few of our members together, and I was like, because, nobody was able to work right then.
Right.
Some people had power, some people didn't. And I was like, we got to go do something. And so a group kind of formed. I remember we met at Warren Baptist, and everybody was just like, okay, let's do this. What are we going to do? And it was probably 150 volunteers, and we just had teams in the neighborhoods that were the hardest hit, because a lot of them had elderly people in there that
Sure.
didn't have the means or didn't have the resources. And of course, with communications being down, not able to call anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And we just started like getting trees out of driveways so they could get their car out, or getting trees off of the power boxes so that the power could be hooked back up once the power came back on. Putting tarps on roofs until a roofer or a repair person could get there. So yeah, I think at the end we did about $1.7 million in free cleanup,
Wow.
minor repairs. We probably presented over $200,000 to our region to help people pay for their deductibles on insurance, because we had some families that had 2 cars sitting in the driveway in their house. So they had $1,500 a car deductible to even get a new car.
Oh.
And then a $35,000 to $5,000 house deductible. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that cash just sitting there to be used when it comes to that. So we did a lot of that. We paid for some temporary housing for some people to stay in hotels, food, clothing, shelter, whatever they needed. We had a vetting process. We had an application process. But yeah, and then we helped a lot of people in the service industry because everything was shut
Mhm.
down. And that, especially, our waiters, waitresses that weren't able to make income. So,
Right.
we helped pay electric bills or whatever they needed. But yeah, about 200. And then the last year, have been working with a group called the Long-Term Recovery Group. We had a couple of groups from Disaster Aid Ohio that are made up of carpenters, trades that do this across the country, and they came here to Augusta, and they've been here for almost a year, and we've been either completely rebuilding houses or rebuilding houses that took on major damage. And a lot of those people didn't either have homeowners insurance
Gosh.
or didn't have enough insurance coverage. And so we were able to do that. We were given a grant, and we're able to do that. And we did, I think, don't quote me on this, I think it's about 65 or 75 projects altogether.
Wow.
And we're still working on a few that we're finishing up, but it was incredible. And then our association rebuilt a home on Old Evans Road. It was an Army veteran. He's 82 and he had no homeowner's insurance, and his house was destroyed by 3 trees that came on the back end. And if you looked at the front of his house, I remember the first time I drove up, there was a gap from the front door to the frame about 7 or 8 inches, because when the trees fell in the back, it like literally just lifted it. Yeah, and just pushed the house off the frame. So we completely tore that down and gave him a brand new house. It had asbestos, so the whole house had to be remediated, and we did that all for free. And it was an honor, and a lot of our members volunteered. They came and painted, cleaned up, we furnished it, and we also made it handicap accessible for him.
That's awesome.
So that if he ever had to be in a wheelchair or whatever, so we made his bathroom, the doorways, all that. So it was pretty incredible.
And I think I remember hearing this story a couple of times because it was all over, which was great. I mean, talk about building community, right? And I'm sure he's so grateful, because if this didn't exist, what would he have done?
Yeah, FEMA offered him. We actually, one of our members who's in the insurance business, she helped him fill out the FEMA application, took him down to when they finally opened in Augusta, and they offered him, I think it was either $8,500 or $8,900. Yeah,
You can't do anything with that.
that thing. And that wouldn't have even paid for the trees to get removed off of his house.
Right.
Because I think the quote we got back because at first we were like, let's get the trees off. We didn't realize the extent, and thinking that FEMA would be a resource for him, so we were going to help him do that. So we were like, at least let's get the trees off and get the house tarp so that if it doesn't, sustain any more damage.
Right.
And I think the quote we got back from having the trees removed was like $15,000.
That's wild.
Yeah. And
That
he
is so
is on a
wild.
fixed income.
Right.
Social Security. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
Now, do you guys still keep up with him?
We do. I'll reach out. I talk a lot to his brother. He has a younger brother,
Mhm.
and I, check in, and
That's awesome.
he called me a couple weeks ago, asking me a question about insurance, and I said, call Samantha, she'll help you. So,
Yeah, that's
it's-
awesome.
And I don't go by there a lot, but sometimes if I'm going that way and I can turn to head back to wherever I'm going, I'll just go by there, and it just brings a big smile
Oh,
to my heart.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all did a great thing, and I mean, thank goodness for what you guys did. So speaking of building community, right?
Yes.
I know that's a big campaign you guys launched
It
recently.
is. So I guess about 3 years ago, we were sitting at a meeting in Savannah. I remember it vividly. There was a couple Savannah builders in there and a couple of our builders in there, from Atlanta. And, we were just talking about our industry for many years, and really still some today. We always play defense.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it's like, guys, like, why can't we play offense? Like, why do we always have to be on the defense? Like, defending our industry, we put roofs over families. Like, we build houses. That's incredible. Like, I'm thankful I have a house to live in. I want my kids. I want everyone here to be able to have a place they call home. And so I just said, why are we always playing defense? Why can't we play offense? And they're like, we are all like, oh, wait, And so after a lot of thought and kind of strategizing what that looks like, because nobody's ever done that before. We brought in a team that helped me. I had the tagline like, "We build community, you call home," and that's usually, in marketing, that's usually
Yeah.
the hardest part, is coming up with what is that overall theme. So we just started putting it together, and it just caught on, and our builders gave to fund the campaign. We have some community partners that, we have Jim Hudson Cadillac, like whoever, they drive the community, and they just embraced it because, all of those industries are tied to the home building industry, because if people are living here, they got to buy a car.
Right.
Or, like Georgia Power, they power the community, all of those type companies, all are touched by the home building industry. And so for us, it was really more of a public service campaign of like educating the public about what the home building industry brings. And I use this example all the time too. My daughter plays soccer at Arsenal, and every time I go on the fields, every sponsor, every sign that sponsors our team, which we're very grateful for, or that sponsors Arsenal, are all tied to the home building industry. It's the real estate companies, the mortgage lenders, the insurance companies, the subcontractors. And I'm just like, they're not just these builders, developers, our members. They live community. Like, they give back. They didn't blink an eye when I called them for like, hey, we need to do this for the hurricane. We need to do this for so-and-so, or we need to do this for this organization. I mean, they never say no.
That's amazing.
And I think that's what we haven't done a great job of telling our story on, is what these guys really do. And, I go to the recreation fields, and on the back of the shirts, there is at least one, probably 3 or 4 that are tied to our industry, that support our kids, on the soccer fields, on the baseball fields, on the football fields. So yeah, that's what building community is.
Great. No, and I love it. And I know you guys also have a podcast.
Do
Tell us a
started
little bit
that.
about that.
Yeah, so this year being our 70th anniversary, and it's kind of like, do you wait till 75 or so? Yeah, but I'm like, that's 70 years. That's incredible. There's not a lot of associations that have been around that long. And so we really wanted to do something different and tell more stories about people that are building community in our community. And so we started the Building Community podcast. We don't have this fancy studio. We do it at our office.
It works.
But it works, and it's been amazing. And for me, you think all the stories or all the things, but it's been incredible for me to learn stories of, how things came, or how someone got in the industry, or other awesome nonprofits that are doing amazing work in our community, that are truly building community. I remember a couple weeks ago we had Ken and Tom from Purewood Construction, and I always thought Purewood was like his family's name, or maybe a relative or something. And so learning the story of how Purewood, it was the street that him and his wife lived on, their first house, and he didn't name it. He didn't want it to be in his name because he wanted, hopefully one day, that the legacy of Purewood Construction would continue. And now Ken's, the second owner. And how Ken came to work there was he answered a newspaper ad. I know a lot of you people don't remember those days when there used to be newspaper job wanted. And that's how Ken and Tom have been working together now for, I think, 30 years.
I know, it's crazy because, especially when, you and I, we do obviously a lot of networking. We're out in the community a lot. And you really don't. You don't necessarily know kind of how things come about until you sit down and you get to have a conversation with them and talk to them, and you're like, oh, that's so interesting.
Well, we just had Dr. Jackson Drumold from Bridge
The best. He's awesome.
Is one of my favorite people. I remember funny story about Jackson. People were telling me I needed to meet Jackson. People were telling him he needed to meet me. And then we finally connected.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I met him, I was just like, I was so drawn and in awe. And I was like, wow, I need to do more and be more, like he just inspired me.
Yes.
And then like I had him on last week, and he had that desire for bridge builders
Forever.
since he was 19. And I'm thinking like
Forever.
at 19, I was like worried about what I was going to wear Friday night,
Right.
or what I was going to eat for supper, like, and he had this vision and this dream and this
Mhm.
fire to do something to help kids, foster care kids. Like,
And then
at
here it
19.
is.
Correct. But
Yeah.
40 years later, or I hope I'm not aging you, Jackson. I'm sorry if I am. But, 30, 40 years later, and that desire still burned. And I think for me, like, it made me realize, like, it's never too late. It's
No.
never too late to make a difference. It's never too late to change something in your community or step up or step out. It's never too late.
That's true. And I mean, what would you, so obviously you guys have all of this. You've got building community, you've got the podcast, all the things you guys do to help with not just our community, but with different clients, builders, hopefully future homeowners. How can our community help you? How can our community get involved in all the things you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think tell the story of what our industry does and provides in our community. I was, prime example, I was at the hair salon a couple months ago, and a lady came in, and, she was running behind, and she immediately started complaining about all the traffic. And I was just, and I don't know, you know me, I'm not very shy, but like usually I just would have sat there and not said anything. Like, she's running late. I get it. I've had those days.
Sure.
But I just was like, well, aren't you? And she had a coffee cup from one of our local coffees in her hand. And I was just like, but aren't you so glad that you were able to stop on your way here and grab a coffee, even though you were running late? And she was like, what? And I was just like, well, if there wasn't traffic here, you wouldn't have been able to stop. And I said, you actually passed 4 other coffee stores on your way to get to that one. And she's like, I never thought about it like that. So I think having those conversations and speaking up,
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with everyone. People that are dear friends of mine, I don't agree with all of theirs. They don't
Sure.
agree with all of mine, but we can have some really great conversation. And I think speaking up, speaking out, don't be afraid. We see it. Everybody can get behind a keyboard and type and say whatever they want behind a keyboard. But I think we need to not be afraid of that, to like, maybe we should get on those keyboards and talk about, instead of all the negative, talk about the positive.
Right.
Or, when you are sitting at a lunch place and everybody's like complaining about the traffic, but like you wouldn't be sitting in this restaurant if there
Right.
wasn't traffic.
Correct.
Because restaurants can't survive without people.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our businesses can't survive if there weren't people here to use those businesses. So I think that's really what it's about, is we have to quit being afraid of all the people that, might feel differently than us, and express what's important to us or how we feel about things.
100%. And I mean, that's part of adulthood, right? And growing is being able to disagree on things, but being able to have a conversation about it, even when you don't agree.
Yeah.
That it's okay. We can have different opinions and still be friends and still be colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And still make this community great.
Absolutely. I mean, we have disagreements with our elected officials all the time because they see it one way, we see it another way.
Sure.
But, we have those meetings and we are respectful of each other. And usually we find somewhere to come together in the middle, where both of us walk out of there like, okay, that was a step in the right direction for both sides. But that's what it takes. Like you got to feel, I always say, if you feel a little uncomfortable, you're doing something right.
Right.
You
Right.
know? Because if you feel comfortable, then are you really challenging?
Are you growing?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the big thing, is I say that a lot too, like in my faith, we tend, as, if you're a believer, or you don't speak up or speak out, but all the others are very loud and all that. And, I'm like, okay, I need to speak up in any regards. I use faith as an example, but yeah, I need to, like, if I don't feel that same way, it's okay to speak up and share my opinion.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, so to kind of conclude our wonderful session, one, I'm so glad you agreed to come
Thank
and
you
we
for
got to
having
chit
me.
chat.
Me too.
But then two, like, tell me something you want the community to know.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you and Blanchard and Calhoun. Y'all have been a member of our association for a long time. Y'all are active, you participate. We've had several of your team members that have served as, chairs or on the board, and we're just very grateful for y'all for that. But I really want people to, when they think about, the home building industry and what we do on a daily basis, we really are building community that you call home. And I really can't think of a better way that sums it up. But, also know that, it's okay to speak up or speak out. I think we can all do it in a respectful way. And there is someone or some organization in our community that could use a hand, whether small, or large. I always think about that. Okay, what can we do to help our community move forward today or next week or next month? And I think that's what it's really about. And I don't mean that just for money. I
Sure.
remember that, I think about that in time or resources. You serve on several boards. I serve on several boards. I bring whatever I can to whatever organization that is humbly asked me to be a part of or help.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really at the end of the day, we're building community.
And if people have questions or they're curious about the home building process, or maybe they have questions about the traffic, I mean, are you guys a resource for that?
Absolutely. You can call or email anytime. Go to our website, homebuildersaiken-augusta.org. I know it's long. Facebook, social media, we're on all the platforms. I'm available at any time. I encourage you to just reach out. Love to have a conversation. If I can be a resource, if you're fixing to do a remodel on your home or sell your home or add on to your home or build a home, please visit our website, call us. We'll be happy to provide you a list of licensed contractors.
That's awesome. That's all we've got today.